Good evening. Welcome to our program, Women to Women. I'm Carol Paz, your hostess, and we have a very special lady full of compassion for very special surprises. And we'll get to Nancy in just a moment. But I'd like to thank our sponsors for tonight's show, Vila Basque Deli and Cafe, right here in downtown Carson City. It's the home of Pete's famous and delicious Basque chorizo. We'd also like to thank carsonnow.org. It's the 24/7 place to go on the internet for anything that's happening here in Carson City. Remember that, carsonnow.org. And finally, we'd like to thank Carpenter Nevada LLC, importer of fine Portuguese extra virgin olive oils, aged balsamic vinegar, and international health teas right here at Vila Basque. So let's turn to our guest, Nancy McPherson. Nancy, welcome to our show tonight.
Thank you, Carol.
Nice to have you.
Good to be here.
You know, I have a place in my heart for one of those passions that you have as well. But before we get to that, let's find out where you're from.
I was born and raised in a little teeny town in north central Idaho, a farming town. I was raised on a farm, 160 acres farm that my dad had inherited from his dad, who actually...
It's a generational?
Yes,
Okay.
but it was his father who... It's not called a land rush, but you know, when they actually come and settle the land.
Yes.
So it was just like a second generation on that farm.
That's neat. And we haven't had many guests on our show from Idaho. So we have a lot of people who travel there who must, and I've been through it as a child. Is it a beautiful state?
It is, and it has, from north to south, has just a little bit of everything. Like I say, I came from a farming community in an area called the Camas Prairie, which was pretty much all farming. If you go farther north, you have the lakes of Coeur d'Alene and the mountains. If you go south from there, you go through the beautiful Snake River Canyon down to the Boise area, that's where the population really is. It's Boise and eastern Idaho.
So how long as a child did you live in Idaho?
I lived there and went to high school like 7 miles from my home. And then across the road from the high school was a Benedictine convent, which I joined on my 18th birthday after graduation from high school.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, let's take it one thing at a time. 7 miles is quite a long trip to go. Would that be a natural situation if you live in Idaho?
Well, if you live on a farm, your closest friend, for example, lives several miles away. So if you're going biking together, it takes a long time just to get together. So 7 miles, I mean, the grade school, elementary school that I went to was only about a mile and a half.
Okay, you know, coming from the Midwest and farming territory, Northwest Ohio and Southern Michigan, Eastern Indiana, it's getting so populated that the farms really are not more than 1 or 2 miles apart from each other. They may have acreage, but the roads connect you pretty speedily. So maybe living in Idaho is a little bit more of a, I don't want to use the word isolation or isolated incident, but maybe the farms, because there's less population in Idaho than some of the other farming states, that you would travel that far.
Right. There was a high school closer to start with, but my dad was very insistent that we get a Catholic education, and that was a school that was run by the nuns.
Okay.
That was why it was right there next to them. It was kind of what you would call a prep school, I guess. So,
yes, usually a very good education.
Yeah, my dad himself had only an 8th grade education, and my mother had a high school education, but he was very insistent that his children get the best. And
now, how do you come from a small family or?
No, there were 9 children in my family. I was
wonderful.
I was the middle. I was number 5. I figured that's when they hit their peak.
And you know, being one of the middle children is a unique position in the number of children that they are. The older ones have a different kind of status or priority, and the little ones, the youngest ones, oftentimes. There are instant babysitters with the older ones, and sometimes the little ones can be very spoiled. I don't know. What was it like with the oldest and the youngest?
Well, the dynamic in our family, because we were spread across 19 years.
Wow.
My older 2 brothers and my older sister were kind of away from the family relatively early because my oldest brother was already in college and finding his own life.
Right.
And then my next brother and my sister, the brother entered the priesthood and my sister entered the convent out of 8th grade. So it kind of cut the family off at that point.
It did.
So the sister older than me would have been in the hierarchy of a family. She would have been more like the oldest, the responsible, that kind of. And I was second, which was a little bit more tomboyish and wild.
Okay. Now, so you're saying that you came from a very strong Catholic background. All right. What, the difference between your sister who entered right out of the 8th grade and you entering your 18th year after graduation, did you both enter the same convent?
Yes, we did. By the time I was in the 8th grade, my mother talked to me and she said, you know, we want you to do whatever you feel good about. But she said, I would recommend that you might make a couple years in high school before you make that decision. And then once I was 2 years into high school, they actually changed the rules at the convent. You couldn't join until you were out of high school, which was fine with me because I was thoroughly enjoying high school and boys and all of that kind of fun.
Okay. When you look back, when you are reflective, what do you think was the main reason for joining the convent? Was it more you or was it family backing?
You know, it was me. I know some people think that my parents forced me into it or it was because everybody there, I always used to joke that I had to enter the convent because I was related to everybody that I knew. Couldn't get married to them. But that was obviously just a joke. No, I was very strongly spiritual as a child, and I just knew that's what I wanted.
That's where you wanted to be. All right. So when you entered the convent at 18, how long were you there?
There was the first 2 years of what they call formation, and then I took my vows. And was getting schooling during this time, education. However, there were a number of Catholic schools that all wanted nuns for teachers, and so at 21, I started teaching in an elementary school, which at that time was grades 1 to 8.
Okay.
And I did kind of what they would call middle school grades now, was the age that I taught, and loved them.
Okay, but that's getting thrown right into the mix.
It's like learning to swim by being thrown in the pool, which was good because I went to schooling, got my schooling then during the summers to continue towards my degree. And I knew then when I was in school what I was looking for. And I could tell which teachers knew what a 5th grader was like and which teachers had probably never met a 5th grader in their lives. So I could, filter that and take what I needed back to the classroom, which
By the way,
good.
I'm a 5th grade teacher, retired.
All right.
All right. So total time that you spent in the convent was what?
It would be 12 years, counting the 2 years of formation.
All right. And may I ask you, what made you decide to leave?
Well, that gets quite personal. A couple of things. One was that I felt my beliefs changing, and I knew that the parents who were sending their children to school to be taught by me wanted those strong Catholic traditions.
Yes.
And I was finding that I personally was not believing them in the strength that I did before.
Okay. And that happens to us oftentimes.
And actually, I had met my husband at that time too. And although I was already thinking about, leaving. And then I met him, and that made it quite easy to leave.
Okay.
Joined him on the road.
Yes. Marriage was meant to be.
Yes.
Marriage was meant to be. But I would have to believe that the foundation that you received from the convent, from your family, are still inside of you today in many ways.
Yes. Yes. Very definitely. I know some women who left the convent almost left bitter about their years there, and I never did. It's definitely a part of who I am today. I don't consider myself religious. I consider myself very spiritual.
Of Christ?
And, no, not necessarily. Spiritual. Spiritual isn't necessarily Christian. Spiritual can be paganism if you want. Buddhist, Spiritual just means caring for a part of ourselves that's not our bodies.
Okay.
So growing in that way.
Would you say that in your early childhood years, and as you went into the convent, you had one relationship with your faith, and now that relationship is more or less has been severed in any way?
not severed. I wouldn't use severed. That kind of sounds
That's too harsh.
strong.
Right.
Changed,
Changed.
evolved,
Okay.
maybe.
Okay. And today, where do you find yourself with that background contributing in society?
In ways that some people think I'm foolish to do, which is that I have some friends who are very needy, and they say, well, why are you always giving to these people? I said, it's what you're supposed to do. It's just what you're supposed to do. So
that is a very strong
yes,
direction in your life, is helping the needy. Now, when you say needy, how do you define that?
Well, it can be anything. It can be emotionally needy. Maybe they need a friend. It can be financially needy, that they need a
Some
step
kind
up.
of help, a bridge there.
Whatever.
Okay. And
all of us have needs of some sort.
Right. Now, is this on a personal level with you, or you do it through a nonprofit organization, or you do it through a church? How do you do that?
Most of those I do on a personal level.
Okay.
I do meet some people through what we will get to in the second part of the show, through my work with the volunteer organization. But you don't have to look far to find somebody who needs somebody. You know?
Very much. And regardless of the times or regardless of the economy, there is such a large group of us who have emotional needs throughout our life. We probably have financial needs throughout our life at one time or another too. And we're really accountable in many ways to one another to be there to help make some bridges for others.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So let's get started. What do you do today?
Oh, you missed a whole important part of when I met my husband and drove an 18-wheeler across the country.
Oh, clue me in. All right.
When
You're a lady of surprises.
Yes, you got to go step by step here.
Yes, we do.
When I left the convent,
Okay.
I joined him. We were owner-operators, and we were leased to North American van lines first and hauled for their, it was called exhibits, electronics and exhibits, so it was specialized.
Okay.
And we had a specialized van. And then we eventually changed over to Atlas Van Lines, and there it was called Special Products.
So wait a minute, you're telling me that you and your husband together drove the 18-wheelers?
Yes, it was ours. The truck part was ours. The trailer belonged to the company. We leased ourselves and what they call the tractor is the front part.
Right.
To the company.
Before we get any further into these 18-wheelers, we have to take a break. I want to know what she's doing in the 18-wheeler, okay, where she's going with this rig. All right, we'll be right back.
I was 36, wanted to do something that was boldly different. We sold our house, drove west with the idea that we were going to be in the wine industry. We lived in a teepee for 2 months.
I mean, if you're going to do something, why not do it with your whole heart?
It's that creative outlet of being able to make something, and make something that comes from the land. Bank of the West said, we have complete faith in your brand. Don't do anything to compromise it. Banks don't say things like that.
Come to the Carson Horseshoe Club for fun and friendly service. Play your favorite games. Join our Players Club, where you get cash for points plus food comps, and enjoy casual dining in our Lucky Horse Grill. Get it all in the heart of downtown Carson City at the family-owned, local favorite Carson Horseshoe Club.
Apex SCF provides cutting-edge, hands-on training that effectively addresses today's threats of violence.
The Apex Stay Alive course teaches proven methods for personal protection and attack countermeasures that can be applied in any environment. In your home, at the workplace, or on campus, Apex will teach you the necessary skills to stay alive, including how to recognize and react to an active shooter scenario.
If you knew you had to fight for your life tomorrow, would you train today? Contact us now to sign up for a class in your region.
Hi, I'm Stephen Lincoln with CarsonCityHomes.com, Carson City's original online real estate resource.
At CarsonCityHomes.com, you get effective and easy-to-use tools to help you select your next home today. With our easy-to-use website, you can search listings throughout Northern Nevada and narrow the results by selecting every facet, quirk, and quality you desire. Visit CarsonCityHomes.com. Welcome back to the second half of our show, Women to Women. We're here with Nancy McPherson, who has taken us through her convent years in Idaho to her driving an 18-wheeler, a rig. We're going to find out more about this, all right? But first, I'd like to thank our sponsors for the second half, brand new sponsors for 2014. The Horseshoe Club Casino, right here in downtown Carson City. It is full of the history of Nevada as pertains to Carson City. Locally owned, locally situated, family owned as well. So if you want a little bit of that mystery and mystique of Carson City, visit the Horseshoe Club Casino. We'd also like to thank Dr. Kent Gabriel, MD, noted plastic surgeon here in northern Nevada, and he practices right here in Carson City, for a tremendous educational background and great experience in so many different ways of surgery. Dr. Kent Gabriel, please consider him. Now let's turn to Nancy. Nancy, welcome back again to the second half.
Thank you.
You know, as we're finding out, you are a lady of surprises, okay? So, you and your husband have now rented into van lines, or you own your own truck, your own rig?
We own the tractor part, which is the front part. People usually call the truck.
Yes.
And then we lease ourselves and our truck to a company. Okay. And when I joined him on the road, he was leased to North American Van Lines. We never did do bed bugging, which is furniture hauling. We didn't do that type. We belonged to a specialized group which was called Exhibits and Electronics. And so we hauled the computer systems and artwork and that type of thing.
Now, that can be a very expensive proposition, especially if you're hauling valuable pieces of artwork, right?
Oh, yes.
Responsibility.
One of the loads that we did, we had a special guide with us. It was a seal trailer and everything, and I asked him what it was worth, and he said, well, basically you can't put a price on it. It is insured for, I think he said, $10 million at that time. It was a turn-of-the-century impressionistic art, Monet, that type of thing.
Yes.
Yes.
Just one of them?
Oh, no, the trailer was filled, but they were all crated up.
Yes.
And thank heavens when we delivered it, we did that particular load twice. And one of the times the curator of the museum was so excited to see it, he started uncrating it right away. So I actually did get to see some of the real pictures.
Oh, how wonderful.
And then they gifted us with a book that went along with the exhibit. So that was very nice.
Now, you went back and forth across North America, up and down and across?
All over North America. And we actually went into Canada once because we were hauling part of you remember the shuttle arms that came out to grab we had part of the arm in our truck, and another truck had the other part of the arm, and we had to take it from where it was built in Canada down to Florida, which I don't remember was Cape Kennedy or Cape Canaveral at the time. But and that was pretty neat too, because I got to go way up high in here where the birds are flying around and look down at the next shuttle, which was about this big, that they were working, little white people working on it down there. The next one that was going to be taking off. So
you were part of history.
It was great.
Yes,
there were a lot of fun things.
How many years in the trucking industry? 10, a decade.
Yes.
That's a long time.
We did about 1 million miles together, because we did anywhere from 100 to 110,000 miles a year.
You know, the truckers that I have met, which are very few, sometimes on trips with my husband, you don't reflect that language.
And I cured my husband of it too.
Okay.
When I repeated it one time when he said something and he went, I said, you don't even realize you're saying those things. And he cleaned it up pretty fast.
Okay. It's great to have a wife as a partner in many cases then, okay. So after the 10 years, what did you two decide to do?
Well, we came off the road for several reasons that aren't really important here, but we did sell our own truck, but he did keep his commercial license, and he did various things with that. He did try driving for another company at one point, and he said, I can't be a company driver. So then he did various other things. I was going to go back into teaching, so I got my teaching degree in Nevada.
Right.
And certification, and that didn't really last very long for various reasons.
Okay.
So I ended up working for a small wholesale business in Minden, and that lasted about 5 years. And then I ended up at the Legislative Council Bureau for 10 years, and then I retired.
You know,
to have some fun.
Okay. I can't count all those years up real quickly in my head, but it seems like you should have already passed away.
No, actually, and after all of that, I retired early. I retired at 59. So
wonderful.
So, and I knew when I retired that I wanted to get into some kind of volunteer work. We made pretty good money when we were on the road. We paid for our 5 acres little home out in Stagecoach, and everything we had was paid for. And so we put money away for retirement, and I was going to.
And what did you finally land into or onto with your retirement?
Well, I knew that when I was thinking about retirement and volunteer opportunities that it would either be with children, because even though I've never had children of my own, I have always been close to children in one form or another.
Yes.
Or animals, which I definitely love. And I also thought of the possibility of working with homebound older people. And I did try, and I worked for over 3 years with RSVP. I think people are familiar with that program. And I did sign up for the mentoring program and flying colors through the interview and never got called back. So I guess there was a reason for that. I don't know. Maybe it was because I lived out in Stagecoach and there weren't children in that area in the program. I don't know. And one day at an event in Dayton, I saw this animal rescue booth, and I went up, ended up signing the volunteer sheet, and
ever since.
Now,
when you have a huge heart, and you're a very adventuresome lady, you're not afraid to take some steps in new directions, which is wonderful, very encouraging to all of us. I'd like to ask you, when you talk about this nonprofit organization of rescuing animals, where do you fit into that?
At first, I was just a volunteer.
Which means doing what?
Whatever. And our founder is always very careful that when she has a volunteer, you only ever do what you feel comfortable doing. Well, I talked in front of classrooms, so I've done a lot of PR work. And I'm not even sure now how it started, but I started a program of getting food donated to us, pet food donated to us, and bringing it to the people who come to food banks basically in Lyon County, both in the Silver Springs area and the Dayton area, although we have reached out to Story County with that also. So now I still drive truck in one way, in that I have a horse trailer cleaned out and full of pet food behind me, and I go once a month to each of these areas in conjunction with the food bank to help people keep their pets, because those of us who have pets and love them, they're part of our family.
Oh, absolutely.
And their options, if they have no money, is to give them to a shelter, and there aren't that many no-kill shelters around here, so that's a horrible thought. Let them go in the desert, which means they're going to die one way or the other.
Yes.
Or starve them. I mean, they just don't have a lot of options. So I wanted to help them with the option of keeping those.
Yes.
Because we are a very small group. Right now, we are working out of the generosity of a veterinarian in Dayton. He lets us have our cages there. So we have only a limited number of animals we can do. We are in negotiations now for getting some property and starting actually to build. Up in Virginia City, which will be fun.
Oh, yes. I hope they can handle that altitude. Nancy, I want to ask you, in the time that we have left, is there a special pet story that's dear or near to your heart that has given you energy to continue and determination, focus, that this is a very important part of what you do now?
There are so many pet stories. I just have to tell you right now, I have 3 dogs, 4 cats of my own, 4 foster cats, and 4 cats in an outdoor enclosure that are semi-feral. So every one of them has their own story.
Yes.
One that always comes to mind was a little white cat that had been darting around my place around Christmas time.
Feral?
Yeah, I thought so.
Oh, okay.
But when she finally came to me, she wasn't feral. She was very skinny, almost frostbitten, pure white. And she did finally come to me, so I kept her and I kept her as a foster after we had her checked out and vaccinated and everything, which we do to all of the animals we take in. And knowing that she was just going to be a foster, and she was kind of just not real snuggly with me, I'd be in the room with her and she'd kind of walk around and look at things. Yes. Yep. But one day, one of my very first kitty loves was finally put to sleep, and I was writing in my journal, which I always do when, I have an event in my life like that. And I started crying as I was writing in the journal, and she stopped just that quick in her steps, came up to me, came up behind me. I was in a lounge chair, crawled over me, laid right on my stomach, and gave me little sweet kisses.
Aw.
She had never done that before. And when I stopped crying, and I said, you can go now. And she'd look at me and I go, I'm okay, you can go now. And she hopped down and she continued her wandering.
Isn't that uncanny?
I rescued her on Christmas Day. She was pure white. She had to be angel. And she was my angel
gift.
that day. Yes.
Now, is she still with you?
No, she was adopted by Carol Lucy, the president of WNCC?
Okay.
Whatever.
Yes,
Western
yes,
Nevada
the
Community
university.
College.
Yes.
It's not community college anymore. It's just WNC.
How long did you have this little white
I
kitty?
only had this little white kitty for about a month until I took her with me to an event I was doing at the college, and just kind of to get people's attention.
Right.
And she did. She got a lot of attention, and she got Miss Lucy's attention, who was allergic to cats. And she said, well, can I hold her to see if it... I said, sure. And she got it all figured out that she could have that kitten. And she wrote me and sent me pictures afterwards of how it got along with her.
That cat was special
It was
in
very
several
special.
ways.
Yes.
Isn't that interesting how animals sense a human's needs?
You know, on that note, my husband died in June of this last year. And although there's plenty of friends and family around, ultimately at night in your own home, it's alone.
Yes.
Where you've been with someone for 35 years. It's
Yes, I
a
know
big
that
alone.
feeling too.
And they were there with love and keeping me smiling and laughing and
Unconditional
cuddling.
love.
And yes, exactly. Exactly.
I think that, I have to believe that God gave us animals for very many purposes, okay? And one of the greatest is comfort.
One of the little quote that I have here that's very dear to me, it says from Anatole France, unless one has loved an animal, a part of one's soul remains unawakened.
How true.
That is very special to me.
Yes. And you know something, Nancy? What is it about a pet that there's no other rival to it in your heart? They're just a completely genuine takeover of the heart. And they're not in competition necessarily with a human for your attention, for your love, but there is something about a pet that creates in your heart a very strong emotional connection that a human can't do sometimes. Or if ever. Well, you know what? I want to say thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for all the careers that you've been in, okay? And if I were to ask you the final question before we say goodnight, what has your life, one of the lessons that has taught you, not only the longevity, but the encounter with life?
Oh, there's so many things that I'm learning every day.
Every day.
I make it a point to read something spiritual or inspirational every day. And the big important thing, I think, is that we are all connected. And by we, I don't mean just the human species.
No.
Every living thing, every inanimate thing. We are all a part of the great whole. And the more you realize that, the more it does not make sense to be full of hate or jealousy or anger or avarice or any of those things, because it's all part of us.
Yes, and those things don't serve us well.
No. And if you want a happy life, you stay away from all of that.
Yes, I agree with you. Thank you. Thank you so
Carol.
much. You're a dear.
This
You're
has
a
been
dear.
Great.
Oh, what a great show and what a great sharing. We'll be back next week with a brand new guest, but in the meantime, stay well, stay safe, and if you see Nancy out in the street, she might have a special pet just for you. Take care. Good night.